Huang Zuntian noticed the change in his expression and immediately shut up. He started to reflect before Hanju could speak. What did he say wrong? Hanju said meaningfully, no matter what high position you are in or what achievements you have to always keep a low profile and maintain humility and caution. Back in the mortal world, you were arrogant and walked towards doom. All these years, you have been walking on thin ice. Perhaps you are tired, but this is the key to your success. Look at me again. When have I ever been proud? Huang Zuntian was ashamed. He had indeed woken up. Thinking about it carefully, he was quite arrogant now. He had a high and mighty attitude towards people and things. He had neglected his subordinates' thoughts and was not as considerate towards his superiors as before. Huang Zuntian hurriedly said, I'm indeed too arrogant. Thank you for your reminder, Master. I'll definitely do as I promised, but I won't say these things anymore. I'll use my actions to prove it. These words were a little high level. He promised and sincerely accepted Hanju's criticism. No wonder this fellow was doing well everywhere. Hanju asked, is there really nothing you need my help with? You can learn a mystical power if you want. Huang Zuntian said, there's really no need. I usually won't make a move. I'll easily expose myself if I learn too much. I've grasped a great Tao Providence mystical power. It's enough to protect me at the critical moment. Hanju nodded and cancelled the dream. Huang Zuntian had developed very well, so he could rest assured. Hanju sent a dream to Sherdudao next as the Dark Forbidden Lord. This time, he gave him a mission. Think of a way to secretly spread the news that the Divine Authority General is a power used by the great Tao Divine Spirits to restrain the chaos. It's not just a rule. You have to think of a way for the other living beings to help spread the news. Don't take the lead. It's easy to deduce. Hanju reminded. This news was not very useful, but he wanted to plant a seed. What if it was useful? Sherdudao finally had a mission and immediately agreed excitedly. From the beginning to the end, he did not mention the battle of the heavenly Tao. The longer he stayed in the chaos, the more he knew how terrifying certain existences were. Some things could cause chaos just by talking about them behind their backs. Let me teach you a mystical power, Hanju said. Sherdudao immediately thanked him. Unlike Huang Zuntian, Sherdudao did not have so many opportunities. There. Hanju taught him 3 mystical powers that he seldom used. Then, he cancelled the dream. He sent a dream to Li Daokong in his true form next. However, Li Daokong did not need a mystical power. The 10,000 life sword was enough for him to cultivate. Hanju didn't give him a mission. He hoped that he could take care of himself. Next was Jing Tiangong. Speaking of Jing Tiangong, this fellow had been wandering in the chaos, but he still hadn't made a name for himself. Hanju casually taught him a mystical power and ended the dream, but Jing Tiangong was still flattered. Worthless. He would wait until this guy became a great Tao sage. Hanju looked at the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao became even more lively after 100,000 years. The 2 chaotic heavenly roads were still being repaired. They would probably recover in at most 5,000 years. This meant that the heavenly Tao was developing better and better. Not bad. Hanju closed his eyes in satisfaction and continued cultivating. In the dark purple starry sky, a figure moved forward quietly. It was Hanju's reincarnation avatar, Liu Bei. Liu Bei scanned his surroundings nervously. After so long, he was still looking for a place for the 3rd Tao field. This area is alright. There are no living beings, but there are fewer restrictions. Liu Bei thought silently and felt a little regretful. Perhaps the previous hidden sect island had set a high standard for him, so he had special requirements when he searched for a place for the 3rd Tao field. At the very least, he could not see the Dao field with the naked eye. Liu Bei continued forward. Several months later, a huge crimson planet appeared in front of him, attracting his attention. This planet was filled with a mysterious aura. It was not chaotic chi or spirit chi, but it attracted him. He quietly approached. He wanted to use his divine sense to observe this planet, but it was isolated by a mysterious aura. He hesitated for a moment and decided to check. Perhaps this was the suitable place he was looking for. After landing, Liu Bei felt heat from the bottom of his feet, but there was no burning pain. The high temperature here could instantly fuse with an immortal emperor, but it was nothing to him. Liu Bei began to wander around and sized up the planet. He was very fast. After all, this planet was huge. Several hours later, Liu Bei suddenly stopped and stared at a hill ahead. The hill was bare and covered in magma. A figure was meditating halfway up the hill. This person wore a tattered robe. Most of his hair had fallen off and his face was like dry bark. His eyes were tightly closed, but a vertical eye between his eyebrows stared at Liu Bei. Liu Bei was almost frightened to death as he broke out in cold sweat. Being stared at by that vertical eye, his blood ran cold. Liu Bei quietly retreated after a moment of stalemate. "Stop right there." An ancient voice sounded softly. Liu Bei immediately stopped. He knelt down and shouted, "Senior, I didn't mean to disturb you. I happened to be passing by. I also want to find a place to cultivate. I have no ill intentions. I'll pretend that I've never seen this place and never mention it." Liu Bei began to kowtow. The ancient voice said, "You're only a clone. Who is the main body?" Liu Bei replied, "My main body is Chao from the heavenly Tao." Chao? The heavenly Tao is very far from here. Liu Bei lowered his head, feeling uneasy. "Don't leave. Stay here and cultivate." "Oh, Yes. All right." Liu Bei agreed aggrievedly. In the blue sky, there were green mountains and rivers. A river crossed the mountains and rivers, floating like clouds. Han Tuo and Yi Tian meditated in the forest. A black light descended from the sky and landed in front of the two of them, startling them so much that they opened their eyes. The black light dissipated and devil ancestor Lu Yuan appeared. Yi Tian smiled teasingly. "You're still alive. I thought you were like the chaotic fiend celestials." Lu Yuan looked down at him and said, "I have a mission for you." Yi Tian curled his lips. Han Tuo asked, "What mission?" "The leader of the divine spirits is summoning the great Tao divine spirits. Go immediately." "But we just escaped from him." "Don't worry. I've already discussed it with him. Let bygones be bygones. Gathering the divine spirits this time is a huge opportunity. The great Tao Sage realm will not be the limit in the future once you succeed," the devil ancestor Lu Yuan said indifferently. Han Tuo frowned. He smelled a conspiracy for some reason. He asked, "By the way, where's the divine authority generals?" Previously, there were rumors that 10,000 divine authority generals were about to attack the heavenly Tao. "The divine authority generals lost," Lu Yuan replied calmly. Han Tuo and Yi Tian looked at each other and saw the excitement in each other's eyes. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, they had heard Hanju's voice, but they didn't dare to confirm the situation. "As expected of my godfather. He's really powerful." Yi Tian smiled proudly, causing Han Tuo to roll his eyes. Lu Yuan said, "Follow me." Han Tuo and Yi Tian had no objections. They immediately nodded and flew up. The three of them quickly fled. Along the way, Yi Tian was very excited. He kept asking the devil ancestor Lu Yuan how the divine authority generals died. Was it really as Hanju said, that 20,000 divine authority generals had appeared? The devil ancestor replied truthfully, causing their blood to boil. Another 100,000 years passed. Hanju opened his eyes and frowned. His cultivation level increased again. Although it was not fast, it was indeed increasing. He couldn't estimate how many years it would take for him to break through. The primordial world was still expanding and there was no limit for the time being. And it was still far from the final battle with the leader of the divine spirits. Hanju still had a chance to break through at least 2 minor realms or even more. Hanju habitually checked his emails. Everyone had their own opportunities, including getting beaten up and unlocking a new map. Hanju looked at the heavenly Tao after reading the emails. The Buddhist world and the Red Fate world were also connected to the immortal world. The heavenly Tao's Providence circulated in the 3 realms. Hanju nodded in satisfaction and started to preach the Tao to the disciples in the 100-peak immortal river. Now, the number of disciples had already reached 15 million, and this was still under control. Han Zuetian and Li Xianao still controlled the authority of the hidden sect. Hanju was still very confident in them and just checked occasionally. 100 years after the lecture, Hanju came to the second Tao field and continued to preach the Tao to the 47 chaotic fiend celestials. 100 years later, the heavenly constellation fiend celestial, Moronchi, and the Crimson Fox began to break through to the Freedom Realm. Hanju was very satisfied. The first tier of the fiend celestial army had finally caught up and could quickly surpass the other hidden sect disciples. Hanju didn't disturb Liao and Tao Comprehension Sword and left quietly after the lecture. Back in the Tao field, Hanju was about to cultivate when he suddenly felt something. His will jumped out of the heavenly Tao and arrived at the peak of the chaos. He looked up and landed at the edge of the chaos. He saw a universe. It was formed by a star that Hanju had thrown out when he had attained the great Tao Supreme Realm. At this moment, a thread formed by the creation rule was connected to that universe. This thread was strengthening. Hanju narrowed his eyes. Was this the sign of obtaining the creation rule? With such a power of creation, that universe would sooner or later give birth to living beings. Furthermore, the speed at which it evolved was faster than ordinary universes. Hanju's heart skipped a beat. He might be able to rely on that universe to obtain the power of creation. Hanju paid attention and his will returned to his main body to continue cultivating. In the mysterious palace, the divine robed Taoist sat on his throne and looked down at a figure in the hall. This figure had a dragon head and a human body. He had a sinister expression and wore a white Taoist robe. He held a horsetail whisk in his hand and his eyes were cold. You want to flatten the heavenly Tao? Stop fooling around. The divine robed Taoist shook his head and smiled, his mockery obvious. Taoist Dragonhead said, that divine might heavenly sage is called the #1 expert in the chaos. I naturally have to ask for guidance. I'm only here to inform you, lest you think I'm not giving you face. The divine robed Taoist's expression turned strange. You're only a great Tao sage. How dare you challenge the divine might heavenly sage? Do you want to be cannon fodder? Humph, the great Tao sages have their own methods. If his divine might heavenly sage can destroy 10,000 divine authority generals, so can I. Hee hee. Taoist Dragonhead turned around and left. The divine robed Taoist's eyes flickered. In the end, he didn't attack. After all, he couldn't figure out the other party's cultivation. In any case, he was definitely not Hanju's match. To prevent any accidents, after Taoist Dragonhead left, the divine robed Taoist sent a dream to Hanju, but the other party didn't accept it. The divine robed Taoist could only give up. He believed in Hanju. The divine authority generals had already died for more than 200,000 years. The Divine Might Heavenly Sage had already been given the strongest title in the chaos. Furthermore, a mysterious force was deliberately promoting the Divine Might Heavenly Sage. The details of Hanju killing 20,000 Divine Authority generals with a single strike spread. Under such a reputation, there was actually someone who dared to challenge Hanju. The Divine Robe Taoist couldn't figure it out. He thought for a moment and sent a dream to Heavenly Venerate Xiandu to tell him about this. Outside the Heavenly Tao, Dark Forbidden Zone, Ing Sacred Palace. In the palace, Heavenly Venerate Xiandu, Sect Master Tianju, and the Foolish Sword Sage sat opposite each other. Facing Heavenly Venerate Xiandu, the Foolish Sword Sage was also very polite. Perhaps Heavenly Venerate Xiandu's cultivation level was far inferior to his, but his future achievements were definitely not bad. The power of the Heavenly Tao was unstoppable. In addition, the Foolish Sword Sage also had a relationship with Laozi. Heavenly Venerate Xiandu repeated what the Divine Robe Taoist had told him. It's not good to trouble you about this. Why don't you help? I'll also help you publicize your contributions and let all the living beings in the Heavenly Tao worship you. The Foolish Sword Sage said, leave this to me. I owe the Divine Might Heavenly Sage my life, so I naturally have to help. If not for Hanju, he might have been killed by the Divine Authority Generals first. Yawan, Divine Authority Generals. Thinking back, his scalp went numb. Heavenly Venerate Xiandu was overjoyed and hurriedly thanked him. The Foolish Sword Sage said, I want to open a Tao field and recruit disciples in the Heavenly Tao. What do you think, Heavenly Venerate? Heavenly Venerate Xiandu smiled. That's naturally a good thing. In the future, sages will also be a part of the Heavenly Tao. His tone immediately became intimate. Sect Master Tianju had a strange expression. He did not expect Heavenly Venerate Xiandu to have such a side. He was very cold and indifferent to them. The Foolish Sword Sage laughed and began to be polite with Heavenly Venerate Xiandu, getting closer and closer. Several hours later, Heavenly Venerate Xiandu left. The Foolish Sword Sage smiled and asked meaningfully, Tianju, what do you think of Xiandu? Sect Master Tianju was stunned. The Heavenly Venerate has done his best for the Heavenly Tao. I naturally admire him. The Foolish Sword Sage smiled. However, the Heavenly Tao's master is not him. You have to take sides well. Hee hee. Sect Master Tianju smiled. Are you bullshitting me? I'm the Divine Might Heavenly Sage's trusted aide. I'm even closer to him than Heavenly Venerate Xiandu. Of course, he wouldn't say this. The primordial heavenly prison was Hanju's secret. Hanju strictly forbade anyone from saying this, and he pretended not to remember it. Unknowingly, Hanju's seclusion time became 100,000 years. Another 100,000 years passed. During this period, Hanju felt a battle fluctuation outside the Heavenly Tao. However, it ended very quickly and didn't harm the Heavenly Tao, so he didn't pay too much attention. He opened his eyes on time after 100,000 years. It had been more than 600,000 years since he had attained the Great Tao Supreme Realm, but he was still far from the mid-stage. Hanju first looked near the Heavenly Tao. The previous battle had long ended. There was no suspicious aura nearby and no traces of battle. Everything looked very normal, as if a battle had never occurred. He counted with his fingers and immediately lost interest when he learned that it was the Foolish Sword Sage who had killed the attacker. He jumped to the chaos and began to observe the universe of stars he had thrown out. This universe had already developed as many stars as Hanju. They were dense and formed vortexes of stars of different sizes. They were dazzling. The creation rule was still nourishing this universe. All sorts of spirit chi appeared in the galaxy. The stars began to flow and gradually gain life. Hanju suddenly had an idea. After thinking, Hanju made up his mind. He first sent a dream to Liu Bei. The dream was in the Taoist temple. Hanju said, "There's no need to look anymore. Come back." Liu Bei opened his eyes and was stunned. "We're not looking anymore?" Liu Bei asked with a long face. Hanju frowned and asked, "What's wrong?" Liu Bei muttered, "I'm trapped." Hanju asked, "By who?" "I'm not sure." Hanju frowned even more. After the dream was removed, Hanju asked in his mind, "Can I insta-kill the mysterious existence who trapped Liu Bei? 400 billion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue?" Too weak. Hanju subconsciously wanted to ignore it, but after thinking about it, he decided to be steady. "Continue." "Yes." Hanju cursed silently. He was really cowardly. What was there to be stable about? He began to wait for Liu Bei to use the invocation technique. No matter what, Liu Bei was trembling in fear because of his orders. Even if he didn't contribute, he had worked hard. Hanju couldn't let him be bullied. Hanju's will had always been left in the Taoist temple so that he could revive when he died. After a while, a black vortex appeared in front of Hanju. He activated all his supreme treasures and divine light burst out. Then, he stepped into the black vortex. Almost instantly, he arrived at a barren red land. Scorching heat surged from all directions. Hanju moved Liu Bei in front of him as soon as he caught his aura. Liu Bei was overjoyed to see him. Hanju ignored him as his gaze landed on a figure halfway up the mountain. This person had 3 eyes and exuded an evil aura. For some reason, Hanju thought of the inauspicious evil. "Why are you trapping my clone?" Hanju asked coldly. The other party opened his eyes and stared at him with 3 eyes. He suddenly stood up. "Great Tao Supreme, what an unfamiliar aura. No wonder I can't deduce this person's background. Since you're here, let's fight and test your ability," the other party said in an ancient and cold voice. Hanju asked, "You have to say your name, right?" The other party said calmly, "I'm the Mad Tao." Hanju suddenly condensed the heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial Dharma Idol and punched him before he could finish speaking. The 10,000-foot-tall heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial bent its back forward and punched down from the sky. This punch was too fast. The Mad Taoist was directly smashed by the mountain-like fist. Boom! The ground collapsed and dust flew, carrying countless magma. Immediately after, the entire star was covered in cracks and shattered, forming a circle of airwaves that expanded parallel to each other. The void twisted violently. Hanju grabbed Liu Bei and stepped into the black vortex. The black vortex shrank. Hanju held the primordial judgment sword and stood in front of the black vortex, waiting for it to shrink. He suddenly felt a powerful aura attack. He immediately waved his sword and the sword chi entered the black vortex, destroying Mad Taoist's body. At this moment, the black vortex vanished. Liu Bei heaved a sigh of relief. Hanju suddenly turned around and used a great change sealing palm to stop him. His sage sense entered Liu Bei's body and erased all the marks left behind by Mad Taoist. He only let go of Liu Bei after 10 breaths. Liu Bei asked carefully, "He did something to my body?" "Yes. Otherwise, how could he let you live for so long?" "True," Liu Bei said awkwardly. Hanju waved his hand and gestured for him to leave. Liu Bei immediately bowed and left. The Mad Taoist has developed hatred towards you. Current hatred points, 3 stars. Hanju immediately checked the Mad Taoist's profile picture. Mad Taoist, mid-stage Great Tao Supreme Realm, chaotic life form, transcendent Tao expert. Because of your terrifying strength, he is afraid of you. Current hatred points, 3 stars. Never heard of him. Hanju didn't care. This hatred was nothing. After all, Liu Bei had accidentally entered the other party's Dao field. He was a reasonable person. The previous battle was already a lesson. He couldn't kill the other party just because he didn't like him. It wasn't easy to cultivate for countless years. Can I rely on the wisp of will in the Taoist temple to revive if I leave the heavenly Dao now and am killed by the chaotic consciousness or the 9th chaos? Hanju asked in his mind in case the other party had extraordinary methods. 100 quadrillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. Yes. He wanted to establish the 3rd Dao field in the universe of stars. He could also try to see if he would be attacked if he left the heavenly Dao. Hanju was still very nervous. After all, he hadn't traveled the chaos for many years. Previously, it was at most a clone. This was the first time he used his main body. He moved quickly. Several breaths later, he arrived at the universe of stars. This was the speed of the great Dao, even if the chaos was vast. Hanju floated above the universe of stars and looked down at the countless stars. He quickly found a huge star in the center and landed, then established the 3rd Dao field. 3rd Dao field has been successfully established. A line of words appeared in front of Hanju. Then, he felt an invisible force circle an area of 10 million kilometers, isolating the aura of the outside world. Spirit Qi and Connate Qi began to grow, indicating that the Dao field was about to be synchronized with the main Dao field and the 2nd Dao field. Hanju began to erase the aura, trajectory, and karma that descended into this universe of stars. All of this could not be seen with the naked eye, but he could use his will to erase it. This was also the reason why a great Dao Supreme could appear and disappear unpredictably. 100 quadrillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? So expensive? Hanju's heart skipped a beat. He chose to continue. No! No! Why did you deduct so much lifespan? On second thought, Hanju thought it through. Perhaps because he was thinking about the 9th chaos, this question was equivalent to asking if the 9th chaos had discovered him. Yeah. The 3rd Dao field had been established. Although the spirit Qi was still steadily increasing, the defensive array formation of the Dao field was already the same as the main Dao field. Hanju found a mountain peak and built a Taoist temple on it. It was just a matter of waving his hand. He tried to capture the power of creation. He planned to cultivate in the 3rd Dao field from now on. Time passed quickly. In the dark void, a figure was speeding. It was the mad Taoist who had suffered in Hanju's hands. With his Dao field destroyed, the mad Taoist had no choice but to cultivate elsewhere. He had already traveled through the chaos for tens of thousands of years. The mad Taoist's 3 eyes scanned the surroundings. Fusong Tree. After escaping the heavenly Dao for a period of time, the Fusong Tree was no longer the same as before. Its entire body emitted an ancient aura. Under the tree, countless meteors gathered and vaguely condensed into a continent. The mad Taoist quickly flew over and landed in front of the Fusong Tree. He sized it up and pondered. The Fusong Tree trembled slightly. It was very nervous. The Fusong Tree calmed down. The Fusong Tree did not speak from the beginning to the end. Time passed quickly. 200,000 years passed. The heavenly Dao had already been renewed. The 3rd chaotic heavenly road was already in creation. Countless geniuses appeared in the immortal world. Even the mortal worlds of the heavens began to rise. The number 1 loose heaven realm was no longer inferior to the immortal world before the heavenly Dao restarted. Outside the 33rd heaven, Dao seekers could be seen in front of every sage Dao field. It was extremely lively, and they were not afraid of disturbing the sages. This was because the sages were very open-minded and could only block the voices outside the Dao field with a thought. Buzhou Palace. Han Yu, Long Hao, and Qin Ling were meditating and chatting. Long Hao smiled and said, "Recently, many geniuses have appeared in the heavenly Dao. The heavenly venerate seems to be preparing to introduce a new primordial 10 sages. Aren't you going to recruit disciples?" Han Yu said, "No need. I like peace and quiet." Qin Ling grinned. "I'm enough for Grandmaster. As for me, I look down on those juniors. My goal is even higher. I'm not only a sage. I want to pursue the Divine Might Heavenly Sage." What kind of identity and status did the Divine Might Heavenly Sage have? He could still take time out of his busy schedule to take care of him. Wasn't this thinking highly of him? The scene of Hanju killing 20,000 Divine Authority generals with a single strike still shocked him. It spurred him to cultivate diligently and catch up. You want to catch up to my master?" Long Hao shook his head and laughed. Qin Ling said proudly, "I believe in my potential." Long Hao smiled faintly. He was also so arrogant back then. He wasn't the only one. The other geniuses of the hidden sect were the same. What a pity! The cruel reality told them that Hanju's potential couldn't be caught up to. Long Hao smiled and said, "In that case, you have to help me. I've targeted a prodigy. He's currently in the Earth Immortal world and has even wandered in the reincarnation space before. Immortal Emperor Samsara is already a heavenly Dao sage, but this fellow rarely interacts with sages. Come with me to visit him." Han Yu hesitated for a moment and nodded slightly. Qin Ling naturally had no objections. The 3 sages immediately stood up and walked out of the palace. Along the way, they passed by a woman in green. Qin Ling nodded at her. The woman in green looked at Han Yu and asked, "Senior, where are you going?" "I'll follow you." Han Yu glanced at her and nodded slightly. Long Hao pondered and smiled meaningfully. This was only a reflection of the sages walking around. As more and more heavenly Dao sages appeared, the relationship between the sages was not as close as before. They began to have their own circles. The leader of the sages was still Heavenly Venerate Shendu. The Divine Might Heavenly Sage was a legend. The sages usually did not dare to disturb him, but they knew who was supporting the Heavenly Dao. As the Heavenly Dao became stronger, its connection with the chaos also increased. It greatly became the center of the chaotic domain in this area. This was naturally fueled by the Divine Robe Daoist. Li Xianao and Han Zuetian were in charge of the hidden sect and didn't dare to disturb Hanju. He felt that life was peaceful again. He really hoped that this would be the case in the future, allowing him to cultivate to the Dao Creator realm in peace. Because the Great Dao of extreme origin contained the truths of the 3,000 Great Dao and included the creation rule, his cultivation was very smooth. On this day, Hanju opened his eyes and checked his emails. Ever since most of the chaotic fiend celestials had been wiped out, the chaos was very calm. The evil heavenly emperor did not fight everywhere. Only Dao Sovereign and the other 3 were beaten up everywhere. Hanju was suddenly attracted by an email. "Your son Han Tuo received guidance from your enemy, the primordial ancestor god, and learned a mystical power." It was not only Han Tuo, but also Qin Ling. What does the primordial ancestor god want? Using my son to threaten me? Hanju thought for a moment and decided to visit Han Tuo in his dreams. The dream was the human city back then. Han Tuo had a head full of white hair and a strong figure. His entire body emitted a powerful aura. He opened his eyes and hurriedly bowed when he saw Hanju. He was very excited, but he still restrained himself. He looked at him with admiration. Han Tuo said, Yi Tian and I are cultivating in the domain of the leader of the divine spirits. Everything is fine. The leader of the divine spirits? Hanju asked. What makes you think you can trick the leader of the divine spirits? Do you know how great the difference in cultivation level is? Hanju asked expressionlessly. Hanju waved his sleeve and in an instant, the dream changed. 3,000 great Tao appeared under their feet like beams of light crisscrossing. Below them was the entire chaos. Han Tuo widened his eyes and turned to look down at the chaos. He was shocked, and his eyes lit up. The 3,000 great Tao were not only beams of light, but also the truth of the great Tao. They invisibly attacked his soul. With just a glance, he could see the countless Tao pursuers above the great Tao and see the myriad worlds floating around. Han Tuo seemed to sense something and suddenly looked up. He saw the high and mighty seven supreme rules like the brightest stars guiding the entire chaos. What's that? Han Tuo muttered to himself. It had been a long time since he was so shocked. Hanju said, This is the domain of the great Tao. He raised his hand and waved it, pulling Yi Tian's figure out of the chaos. Immediately after, illusions appeared behind Yi Tian. They were all about Yi Tian's past and future, including who he had interacted with. Han Tuo was silent. He understood what Hanju meant and suddenly felt that it was a ridiculous thing to do. He had underestimated the power of the great Tao Supreme. Han Tuo was no longer the brat from back then. He had experienced many things. Although he was proud now, he also understood many principles. He often recalled his experiences and understood one thing. Although he didn't dare to admit it, the truth was that all his opportunities couldn't escape Hanju's eyes. The more he thought about it, the more afraid he became. Father, what should I do? Han Tuo asked carefully. This time, he did not dare to be careless or promise anything. He wasn't stupid and knew that the leader of the divine spirits was keeping to threaten Hanju. It would be too sinful if the enemy harmed his father because of him. So far, he had yet to repay him. Actually, it was not only Han Tuo. The disciples of the hidden sect also had this problem. They wanted to repay Hanju, but he didn't need it. This fellow had been in seclusion and there was almost no trouble. Hanju said, Let nature take its course. Don't have any thoughts of plotting against the leader of the divine spirits. I'll think of a way if there's a chance to escape. Han Tuo could only nod. Hanju instructed again and removed the dream. Opening his eyes, Hanju sighed. Then, he smiled again. Interesting, Hanju muttered to himself with excitement in his eyes. After cultivating for a long time, it had been quite boring. The primordial ancestor god was his mortal enemy, to begin with. Now that Han Tuo was causing trouble for him, he was a little happy. There was still someone who needed him. No one looked for Hanju after 200,000 years. Even Xing Hongxian was busy cultivating. Hanju still felt a sense of loneliness deep in his heart. Can I insta-kill the primordial ancestor god now? 1 trillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. No! Hanju directly gave up on using the dark forbidden zone. He still had to curse. Hanju thought silently. Then, he teleported to the main Dao field and observed the heavenly Dao. The heavenly Dao's development was still smooth. With the foolish sword sage, red fate, and great sage void soul guarding outside the heavenly Dao, it could be said to be impregnable. After watching for a while, Hanju stood up and walked out of the Daoist temple to visit Xing Hongxian. After entering the temple, he sat beside Xing Hongxian and chatted with her. Xing Hongxuan's cultivation level was also steadily increasing. She was very happy to see Hanju and quickly took the initiative to chat non-stop. Hanju was sometimes very curious about Xing Hongshuang's personality. She had always been in seclusion, but this woman always had endless things to say and would never be cold. After a long time, Hanju talked about Han Tua. In any case, the Tao field could isolate the leader of the divine spirits from prying, and he was not afraid of being discovered. Xing Hongxian consoled, "He did it for you. Don't blame him too much." She stared at Hanju carefully and suddenly smiled. "I see that you're also very happy. You actually came to find me for this." "That's true. You're the high and mighty divine might heavenly sage. Usually, the disciples don't dare to disturb you. The hidden sect and the heavenly Tao are also under your control. Even if the sky collapses, they can't threaten you. It's rare for something to make you worried." Hanju asked, "Do you think our son will cause such trouble like Han Tua in the future?" Xing Hongxian covered her mouth and laughed. "In my opinion, he can cause more trouble than Tuar. Tuar is already not bad. How many times has he troubled you since he was young? Our son's potential is so big. He will definitely be extraordinary in the future. There will only be endless trouble." Hanju smiled. "I see. Then, let him not be born in case it's troublesome." "Do you sound like a mother?" "Hee hee, we can always have another child. You're the only husband I have. How can I harm you if you're afraid of trouble?" The two of them joked. Hanju left several days later. Hanju was in a better mood after chatting with Xing Hongxian. As for his youngest son, he was still in her womb. Hanju already had an idea. When he gathered the 9 primordial fragments, he would use the primordial chaos great creation to elevate his bloodline. This way, his youngest son would be the only primordial fiend celestial. Hanju was already looking forward to that day. After returning to his Taoist temple, Hanju thought of Liu Bei and was about to summon him. Originally, he did not want to let the third Tao field go, but Liu Bei had suffered in the chaos for so many years. He couldn't be neglected. Although Liu Bei was a clone, he used the body of the victorious fighting Buddha. His intelligence was already independent. Liu Bei was uneasy but also excited as he arrived at Hanju's Taoist temple. Hanju didn't say anything else and brought him to the third Tao field. Liu Bei was stunned when he saw that everything in the Taoist temple had changed. "This is the third Tao field. Cultivate with me in the future. I asked you to go to the chaos to find the third Tao field. I think it's indeed difficult for you," Hanju said. Liu Bei was grateful and hurriedly thanked him. Looking at his only independent clone, Hanju's gaze softened. "You and I have been together for more than 3 million years. I have indeed neglected you. Not only you, but many people have also been neglected by me." The great Tao of extreme origin instantly covered Liu Bei. It was unknown if Hanju did it on purpose, but his Tao voice echoed throughout the entire third Tao field.